Rob here at etrailer.Com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Timbren suspension enhancement systems for our Ford F53 chassis motorhome. Now, motorhomes can be great. We can take a lot of trips, spend time with our family, see a lot of places that we've never seen before. But one thing that nobody really talks about when it comes to motorhomes is how bad they handle and how much sway they really have. For a lot of times we're driving down the road, a gust of wind may come, or a truck driving down the highway, it's going to start pushing us around. Because let's face it, there's a lot of area for wind to catch. And that can be very scary going down the road in such a big vehicle and not feeling like you have control. And our Timbrens are going to alleviate a lot of that feeling. We're going to feel a lot more stable and under a lot more control of our motorhome because it's going to brace everything and we're not going to have such a mushy feeling. So here's what our Timbrens look like once we have them installed. These are going to replace our factory joust stop, and they're going to mount in between our frame and our rear axle here. Now you'll notice that we do have a bit of a gap right here, but keep in mind we have our motorhome lifted up by the leveling jack so the suspension is sagging down. Not only so we can get a little bit of room, but that's how you're going to get your spring in place. Our springs are going to have a progressive rate to them, and since they're made out of rubber, when they do contact our axle, if we have a lighter load or a soft bump that we hit, our springs are engaged kind of soft. But the harder bump we hit or the more weight we put down, the springs are going to start to compress. The more they compress, the stiffer they're going to become, providing us that much more support. We're going to have one spring on each side of our axle here. And since the springs are not attached, they're going to work independently from each other, which is going to help out a lot when it comes to either off-center loads, or if we take a sharp turn or a big gust of wind comes, we're not going to have so much body roll going in and out of the turns. And our Timbrens are going to come with everything you need to get installed: the springs, the hardware, and all the brackets. And the best part is, we're not going to have to lift up our motorhome using any kind of lifts. We can use the leveling jacks, and all four tires can still stay on the ground. To start your installation, you want to park your motorhome on a level ground, or as level as you can get it. Apply the parking brake, and then we're going to use our rear leveling jacks to lift up the rear end just enough so that there's a little bit of hang in the suspension. But you don't need to have the tires off the ground. You can do this in the driveway. So if we move underneath our motorhome, when we come right to the rear axle, right above it, we're going to find our factory bump stop. Now what's holding it in place, there's going to be two bolts that are going through the frame, and we'll have nuts on the inside of the frame. So you're going to want to grab a 15mm socket and a 13mm wrench, and we can take the bolts and nuts loose. Once we have all the hardware removed, we pull our joust stop out and we can set it aside. We're going to need to assemble our spring before we can put it in place. So we'll grab the rubber spring out of our kit. We can take one of the round spacers and put it right over the top where we see that sleeve in there. We'll line the two up. And then we'll take this L bracket. There's going to be 4 holes that are slotted. Then we'll have a single hole that has a recess in it. You want that recess to be facing up. So we'll put it over, and we'll take our cap head screw, and we're going to drop it down. Now you need to hold this with your finger, and we'll flip it over. And if we look inside of our spring, there's a washer in there. You want that washer to go completely around the stud of that bolt. So to help me out, I'm going to take an extension and a socket, just kind of work it on there until I can get the washer to lay flat. And once the washer is laying flat over the stud, we're going to take a locking nut and we're going to secure it. Now again, it will be a little difficult to line everything up, so I'm going to use that socket and extension, kind of turn my spring sideways, try to get it in there lined up. But if it doesn't line up properly, you can just drop the nut out and try again. Just have to have a little bit of patience and take your time. So I'm going to use a 5/16 Allen socket on a ratchet. I'm going to hold that bolt still, and I'm going to take a 19mm socket and an extension and tighten up the nut from the inside. Whenever you tighten this up, you just want it to be nice and snug to where that spring isn't going to move on the bracket. And the other side is going to assemble exactly the same. So we're going to come back underneath with our spring, and that L bracket, those 4 oblong holes need to be on the outside of the frame. Now you'll notice that there are 4, so we have the option of where we need to mount it, and that really is just, we want our spring to be sitting as close above the axle as we can, so we're going to determine which holes we're going to use. So in our case, we're going to be using the furthest hole that's pushing our spring back. We'll grab the 3/8 bolts out of our kit with a flat washer. We'll put it through one of the holes to where it comes through the frame, and then we're going to take a 3/8 lock nut and secure everything down. You just want to get everything kind of loosely in there until you have all your hardware in place. I'm going to come back with a 9/16 socket and wrench and snug everything up and make sure it's secure. With this side installed, we can repeat the exact same process on the other side. That'll finish up your look at the Timbren suspension enhancements on our Ford F53 chassis motorhome.